All right, welcome to anybody who's been listening along with us. Sorry that we've been kind of sparse in terms of introductory notes during this series, but we appreciate any of you who are following along with us, and I hope it's at least relatively self-evident what we're doing. So we're going to read from part 3. We got up to part 3. I'm just going to share my screen. Should we recap before we read, or?
I think that will help. Andre, like we missed last week. Actually, let me keep quiet. Every time I suggest we recap, it falls on me. So like let's just carry on. Let's just carry on.
You don't have the reading in front of you, Sipho. You haven't been to the library yet.
It's too busy today, bro. It's too busy today. I cannot deal.
We were, because it was 2 weeks ago now, but we were speaking about the naturalness of the state, I think, and how we might arrive at that idea. And I think there were two ways that we came to that idea, that the state, or its naturalness, or
The most natural, something like that.
I'm checking on the reading here.
Yeah, this is feeling very awesome.
I think one was because it's the end of because the end of something is its nature, and the state is the end of can't remember exactly the end of what now, but
the other the other collections.
Yeah, the end of the collective, because unlike the other ones, it's what was the word? It's not for anything else.
So we had the sense that it's the most natural.
And I think the other reason was because it was composed of natural parts. I think that was the second reason.
Are those separate reasons?
I think
it's a sort of one of Aristotle's all the more so kind of arguments. So the parts of the state, the collections that are parts of the state, are natural. The state as a whole is the end of these other states, and in everything, what's most natural is the end. So it has to be even more natural than the other parts. Something like that.
Yeah.
Sounding good.
You okay, Thomas? You're creeping me out.
I'm just listening.
Oh.
Yeah, he did say he's gonna listen mostly today, but we'll rope him in at some stage, I'm sure.
It's the cat. It's giving him a menacing order.
Are we feeling sufficiently reviewed?
So where are we?
We at part 3, chapter 3 of
book 1.
Book 1, yeah.
Are we opening lines of book 1?
Say again?
Are we opening lines of chapter 3?
Yeah.
Are we invested?
You can see the reading, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
We
here, I'm pretty sure. Happy to read.
Let me just read this last paragraph of chapter 2 again as the end of our review, and then you can take over, Daniel.
Yeah, good idea.
Accordingly, there is in everyone by nature an impulse towards this sort of community, and yet he who first founded one is responsible for the greatest of goods. For just as man is the best of the animals when completed, when separated from law and abjuration, he is the worst of all. For injustice is harshest when it is furnished with arms, and man is born naturally possessing arms for the use of prudence and virtue, which are nevertheless very susceptible to be used for their opposites. This is why without virtue he is the most unholy and the most savage of the animals, and the worst with regard to sex and food. Justice is a thing belonging to the city, for adjudication is an arrangement of the political community, and justice is judgment as to what is just. That's pretty harsh warning there as well. This natural community is something we're all impelled towards, but it's responsible for our greatest goods, but also apparently for our greatest evils. It's done incorrectly.
Yeah. There was that bit on like the gregarious animals, like these herd animals or group animals. And then the arguments about our political nature, or that we're political animals. So there's a naturalness to our political being, in which something like justice is relevant, but justice isn't assured in a natural way, in that we can not be virtuous, or we can be collected um, so as to misuse our arms, and then we're worse than other gregarious animals, like significantly.
It's interesting. Relative to the way political life is thought of nowadays, that this, Aristotle is willing, I won't even say willing to accept, but he's aware of this duality of powers, potencies, that the potency for the highest benefit is often the potency for the most devastating, whatever the opposite of benefit is, harm. So much of modern politics is erasing anything that has any potential for harm, and then we wonder why nothing's beneficial anymore.
Yeah.
Getting rid of both together. Aristotle's suggestion is to harness the potential properly. It seems, yeah.
Yeah, I kind of have a question around, because we were on the subject of naturalness, like this if we can't get rid of that propensity or of our political nature, then harnessing would seem to be the better picture than trying to get rid of. Because if you're trying to get rid of something that is natural, well, it's not going to work. But then my question is something like, what is it that is natural in that sense? Like what is it? Is the naturalness to be gregarious, or and to be collected? That would seem to make both possibilities possible, that the gregariousness could be harmful or beneficial.
That could be true. It seems like here he's talking about it's the impulse towards community, our political nature to join together. The gregariousness was was a sort of a sign of it, wasn't it? It's a sign of our political nature, or an aspect of our political nature.
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of overusing that word because I wasn't too sure what it meant.
Gregarious.
Yeah. Just knew that it was associated with like herd or something.
Yeah. communicative. Is that another word for gregarious?
Yeah, yeah, sure. It was the I don't want to detract us, but it's a um Anton Kruger from Rhodes there is he's in India at the moment, and he was speaking about how the people in the ashram that he's visiting kind of relate with one another in terms of fulfilling their daily duties, and also like the functioning of the ashram, and then also they're relating with visitors. And he was um, surprised by the lack of politeness. Like there's like a sense of dutifulness in everybody that's functioning within, but there isn't this like almost something excessive in politeness. The word that he used was gregariousness. Like there isn't a gregarious. Um, so it's not like it wasn't an ill feeling, but he was expressing it. It was quite good to be in that context.
Yeah, traditional cultures in general, I found tend to be far less polite than the sort of very British kind of South African
Yeah.
avoidance of anything that looks like conflict.
Yeah. Yeah. It's incredibly difficult, and I think it's very scary for people because of proximities to violence, and like as soon as but we need to get over it, I think.
Yeah, that's interesting. There's a lot more than just I always just blame the British for politeness. There's probably much more to it.
Yeah.
I mean, South Africa is a country where people from different cultures have to get along. Uh,
Yeah.
Politeness is a way to do that. Sometimes it feels like it's making the exact mistake that Aristotle is cautioning us against here, just trying to get rid of a potential for conflict that is also a potential for some sort of higher, deeper understanding.
Yeah. Yeah.
I always remember this one reading group we had at Rhodes. This was several years ago. This was before Marius retired. We were reading this work on bullshit. Do you know this?
It was
Right.
during retirement. It was like readings for his retirement, wasn't it?
Was it part of the readings for Marius? Were you there for this, Thomas?
Yeah, we were all there, I think.
Dave and I remember this.
There was
So
one.
you guys were all aspect of it I remember was that I was offering this account of what I forgot the guy who wrote the essay. I forgot what his name is. I was offering this account of what he was doing, on which it turned out that politeness was kind of bullshit, and that became clear. And I can't remember if it was Marius or Francis, but they were kind of united in an objection to, well, that can't be right. And I remember being in this position where I was sort of advocate, well, I mean, maybe politeness is kind of bullshit, and they just we're not hearing it. We just arrived at an impasse.
Were you being polite about it, or?
They were. We were all sticking to our guns.
Yeah, sure. The those those reading groups are so beneficial. I was thinking about it last week actually in the absence of our meet. Um, because also like just the voluntary nature of these meetings as well. There was something about that um and then um having the all the lecturers or some lecturers present, and it was, yeah, a really valuable space. those reading groups.
It's a great idea. I think, aren't you guys doing them again? Sipho, hasn't Tess been organizing reading groups? You're on mute up there.
Yeah, they started recently. I think we're on our fourth week. We'll be on our fourth week now.
How are they going?
I went to the first one. I wasn't able to go to the next two. I had too much marking to do the next two, but the first one was pretty good. It was about friendship, and what a good friend is. Something of that sort. Actually, do you remember Kelly?
Sorry?
You remember Kelly?
Terry.
From Kelly. From what's this thing we were at again? The attending together. What's we call it? Workshop.
Yeah.
Yeah. She was actually saying she wishes you were there. Wishes you were there so you can give the account of friendship you gave during your talk. Because it would have been an interesting addition to what exactly makes
What was his name? Sorry, your mic is a little bit unclear. I couldn't get the name.
Kelly, not his, her name, Kelly.
I have no idea who that is. Where's he from?
Kelly, she works there with the center, with Pedro. You'll probably know her when you see her.
Oh, Kelly, is that what you said?
Yeah, that's what I said. My mic is probably.
Yeah, it sounded like Endley.
No. So the reading groups are still going. I'm actually looking to attend more, but I need to manage my time better. I've scattered my time too much.
All right.
On another point,
maybe we should keep going.
on another point, on what we're reading. I don't know if we're going back to the text. It seems from this last paragraph you were reading, and the one Daniel brought in about the herd animals. Seems justice is tied to community in a way. I don't know if I'm expressing this point well, but there seems to be a huge emphasis on justice. Because I remember when we were talking about the animals, talking about how language, how we have language specifically for that. And now it seems to be coming back in this last paragraph. I can't remember exactly what you read, man, but it was something about justice in the society.
That the piece on language with the distinction from other herd or gregarious animals was that they have a kind of voice, but it's about pleasure and pain, communicating pleasure and pain, and then we have speech, and nature doesn't make a mistake, so there must be a reason for why we have speech, and it's because speech is specifically for determining what's expedient or inexpedient, and those determinations are bring it into the political and the just. And
something about this last paragraph brought that to mind. I can't remember exactly what the wording was.
sure.
Anyway, let's go.
Continue.
Yeah.
Okay, there's no need to be polite. You can tell me when to stop, but I won't, because let me know if the screen is being shared.
It looks like it. I actually can't see it, but I don't need it then. Oh yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Let me know when I should stop. I hope it's big enough so that anybody watching could see as well. So
Hmm.
part 3 or chapter 3 of book 1 is where we at. Seeing then that the state is made up of households, before speaking of the state, we must speak of the management of the household. The parts of household management correspond to the persons who compose the household, and a complete household consists of slaves and freemen. Now we should begin by examining everything in its fewest possible elements, and the first and fewest possible parts of a family are master and slave, husband and wife, father and children. We have therefore to consider what each of these 3 relations is and ought to be. I mean the relation of master and servant, the marriage relation, the conjunction of man and wife has no name of its own, and thirdly, the procreative relation. This also has no proper name. And there's another element of a household, the so-called art of getting wealth, which, according to some, is identical with household management, according to others, a principal part of it. The nature of this art will also have to be considered by us. Anything there anybody wants to pick up on? It's,
Can we finish the next paragraph?
it reminded me of that. There was that Friends of the Cupboard, or what's the poet called the family like Friends of the Cupboard.
Hmm.
Really?
Yeah, I'll do this.
Was that with you, Dan? I heard that recently. Cupboard, something to do with friends of the cupboard. Sorry.
It's in the text. It's in something that we've
Oh,
passed.
yeah.
Let us first speak of master and slave, looking to the needs of practical life and also seeking to attain some better theory of their relation than exists at present. For some are of opinion that the rule of a master is a science, and that the management of a household and the mastership of slaves and the political and royal rule, as I was saying at the outset, are all the same. Others affirm that the rule of a master over slaves is contrary to nature, and that the distinction between slave and freeman exists by law only and not by nature, and being in interference with nature is therefore unjust. Okay, it seems some pretty interesting stuff there.
Hmm.
Shall we zero in on the, I guess what most got my attention is at the end here on this, on the by nature and not by nature, in the context of rule.
Sorry. It doesn't. I don't know. I'm not seeing him say anything he hasn't said before here, unless I'm missing something. I
Yeah,
think that. Yeah, I was about to say. I think the only thing that looks new to me now is the addition of what do you call the procreative relation?
as different from the
In the
marriage.
initial chapter, you already spoke about the 2 groups that belong to a household. I guess also the getting wealth is the fourth one that's used. Yeah.
As a that's the other function. The one function is the procreation here. Well, that's a type of relation.
That's type of relation, and then
Getting wealth.
getting wealth be a function.
Household management and getting wealth are the 2 functions.
Hmm. I suppose it's not that different from when you said for the sake of survival. You're saying household is for sake of addressing uh, daily means of survival, not the daily requirements of survival. I don't
This,
know.
yeah,
What does everybody else think?
the what
Strange.
I've
Go ahead, Daniel.
just what I highlighted there seems to be the like a recurring direction that he makes in the inquiry, that for some of the opinion that the management of the household and the rulership over slaves and uh, um, acquisition of wealth, I'm not sure if that was in that paragraph, are all the same science, and then he wants to develop that account.
It's interesting
Some
that he says that something that's against nature is unjust. Like, sorry, I'm distracting you. Carry on with your point. Carry on with your point.
the I'm hoping for Larry's intervention, but it seems the same question of um, this naturalness, where naturalness comes into justice. So the or comes into the equation, like our introductory notes in terms of the same potency is the cause for the worst harm that we can cause ourselves and others, and that same potency is the cause for the best benefit, so to speak. So I now don't have the text on the screen, but what I was suggesting was this recurring question was this line: for some of the opinion that the rule of a master is a science, and that the management of a household and the mastership of slaves and the political and royal rule, as I was saying at the outset, are all the same. Others affirm that the rule of a master over slaves is contrary to nature, and that the distinction between slave and freeman exists by law only, and not by nature, and being an interference with nature is therefore unjust. Is it? I was
What sort
wondering
of
if
a,
it's
what sort of a way of dividing up the household is this? Into master and slave, into husband and wife, and into father and children? That's not a division. Those are three different divisions.
so we don't have the basic element of the household. So
And those are the basic elements.
So where are the children? Did he mention children?
father and children,
Yes,
yeah.
that's the third one.
I got a call just now. Sorry, guys, I'm going to have to go.
All good, Tom.
Just as it gets interesting. You guys look after yourselves, eh?
You too, you too.
Wait, no.
I'll catch your recording. Away.
All right. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, Tom.
Oh,
So we should begin by examining everything in its fewest possible elements. So are you saying, Larry, that these aren't the fewest elements, or we're not looking for the smallest element, or
Well, there are three ways of dividing up the household, but the man of the house shows up three times.
yeah, I didn't notice that.
There's the master slave, then there's the husband wife. The husband is probably the same as the master. And then there's the father children. And the father is probably the same as the husband and the master.
Yeah.
It's quite a strange division here. I'm not really, I don't really have anything to say about that. I'm not sure what he's doing other than just to point out how strange it is. Then there's he's emphasizing the question that he emphasized at the beginning, that it's unclear if what this collective has in common with the collective that is the state. Although we have noticed one major difference between the two, which is that this collective is within a higher collective and the state is not. And then also this question of the naturalness of the master-slave relation, what it would mean for that to be by nature. That one's a big deal, and politically loaded, not only in the Aristotelian sense, but in the modern sense, to say the least.
Yeah.
As is the husband-wife.
Yeah, as is that first, I mean, that first reiteration of the husband, father, master probably being the same. But this is also a recurring theme in terms of this, because that conversation is very close to our conversation of rulership, or so you can kind of abstract the principle or of ruler and ruled.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. The father-child relationship is also an interesting one. I've been struck lately, being back in the US, with how critical people have become of that relationship as a subordination. Actually, we don't want to. I mean, we don't want to tell our child. We don't want to direct our child into the way of life that we have set for them. Is the sort of new standard. It's about, there's something very beautiful and appealing about it. We want to let our child develop into their own person. There's also a sense in which, you don't tell your child anything. You don't give them any moral guidance. Moral guidance is obstructing their free personal development. And it's not a view without consequences. Let's put it that way. I mean, the most striking one for me was actually a debate a couple of years ago about these. I'm afraid to say this on record, but I'll just go for it. Whatever. There was a debate about these puberty blocking drugs that people were giving children so that they had more time to decide what they wanted their gender to be. That's a major thing to give. I mean, if it's a puberty blocking drug, the kid getting it would be what, 11, 12? That's a major thing to put in a kid's body.
Yeah.
So that a kid has more time to decide on their own gender, which apparently is a decision that they're going to make before they're 15. It's not a decision made without consequences, is what I'm saying. The debate was whether or not it was a good idea, and the possibilities seem to be either it was a really good thing or it's not something we should do. But it wasn't suggested that, in fact, one of the possibilities is that it's child abuse. So when we get these options presented, it seems like the question is, is this thing okay or not? And not, is it actually beneficial? And that's,
Yeah.
it's hard to talk about this
Mm.
openly. Is the master slave potentially something beneficial? Is not a sentence that you are allowed to say. Well, it's not a question you're allowed to ask.
Yes. Yeah.
But that's what he's asking. He's asking, maybe, is it natural?
Is it
People have
natural? Yeah.
claimed, people have claimed that it's not, but maybe it is. And if it is natural, it's good. It has a benefit.
Yeah.
Now, what does that mean? And what sort of master-slave relationship are we talking about? It's probably not, he is probably not, I have too much respect for Aristotle to even consider that the master-slave relationship he's talking about is the American Old South or apartheid South Africa. What is he talking about? What could this natural relationship be? That's the sort of thing to keep in mind. And then we got the husband-wife one, and that one's at least as problematic and difficult to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an incredibly rich area, and we just kind of like flew over it in our initial thoughts about it, and it's probably like a testament to almost the difficulty of even being clear about very basic, simple things today. Even in thinking, like the way that you expressed how the question gets asked today as being something like, is it okay? As opposed to what is the benefit of, say, like uh, ruled and ruler, or master and slave, or father and child, or so like a father ruling over the child's. It's often very disturbing how the little anecdotes that I hear in terms of how a child comes to, it's even tricky to use the word decision, like how they come to that decision to use blockers, because there's often some kind of influence or voice. I'm just speaking in terms of anecdotes that I've heard, like voice in the child's ear that entertains this idea that you might be misidentified with your. So there has to be influence, and the parents often feel uh, pain because their children go into contexts where they are influenced in this manner and they don't quite know how to deal with it. So the this the the way that you phrase the difference in terms of the question being, is it okay, as opposed to what is the benefit or where is the benefit. Um, the For me, that question that is asking, is it okay? It's deferring the moral question of like what's good in this situation. So it's deferring rulership, and then it usually defers it into some vague social consensus that the force of which today is some kind of majority in sentiment. So there's like a majority sentiment that the good or the right in this instance plays out in X way. You affirm the puberty blockers for the 11-year-old, but it's the the whole anxiety around the question is the is it okay? Which is inferring a moral superiority coming from somewhere, but nobody's clear about where that's coming from, and it gets deferred. That's why the sense is like it's deferred to this, um, to some vague consensus at a social level that isn't really claimed by anyone. But
There's Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. There's like some vague intuition we have about what's right or good that we're applying, but it must necessarily remain unstated. And I think it's necessary for this sort of account that it remain unstated. And I'm realizing now that I just read that last paragraph of chapter 2 because it's always good to have a review. But in this case, I mean, he's saying something. First of all, these chapter divisions are not his, right? He did some medieval editor came up with them. He's given us a really interesting warning right before he's told us about these relationships of subordination. And that warning is, the potency for our greatest benefit and the potency for our greatest harm is often the same potency. So we shouldn't be surprised that, just to use what I think is the most obvious example, although many women would disagree with me, the master-slave relationship has turned out to be an extremely harmful form of subordination. That doesn't mean that Aristotle is advocating for the harm. Maybe he has something entirely different for this relationship in mind. It's going to turn out that he does.
Mm.
And that the properly ordered, the relationship is going to have to be beneficial for both sides, just like the proper father-child relationship is really as much or more for the sake of the child than for the father.
The content that I have to give that potency now is it's this, well, it's the impulse to be together or collected, or that seems to be the
Your question from the first meeting that we had, I think, is still a really good one, and I don't think it's a good question in that it's one of those questions that maybe we're never going to get a final answer to in a sort of normal sense. And that is that the good of the whole seems to be to benefit the parts. We have this whole, each part, the good is the collection that it's a part of, and so on and so forth going up. But when we get to the top in the political community, the point is to benefit the members of the community in some way. And that seems to contradict the whole structure that we're getting. So to here, there's a distinction between a father and children, or a master and slave, or husband and wife, and the one is subordinates the other. It should be good for both of them if it's natural. Otherwise, it's not what it is. It's not something we want.
yeah. That would seem to be the most important place to go into now, is then this, whether the distinction between slave and master exists by law only, or by nature.
Yeah, let's do a little bit more here. I'm noticing all my batteries are running down, and I left my chargers on campus, so I'm probably gonna suddenly disappear from this meeting here, guys. Oh, looks like Thomas is back.
Thomas is back. All good.
Should we jump into chapter 4 here?
Yeah.
For sure.
Hey, Thomas.
Hola. Thank you for waiting for me.
Should I read? Okay.
Yeah, go for it.
So property is a part of the household, and the art of acquiring property is a part of the art of managing the household. For no man can live well, or indeed live at all, unless he be provided with necessaries. And as in the arts, which have a definite sphere, the workers must have their proper instruments for the accomplishment of their work. So it is in the management of a household. Now, instruments are of various sorts. Some are living, others lifeless. In the rudder, the pilot of a ship has a lifeless instrument. In the lookout man, a living instrument. For in the arts, the servant is a kind of instrument. Thus, too, a possession is an instrument for maintaining life. And so, in the arrangement of the family, a slave is a living possession, and property a number of such instruments. And the servant is himself an instrument which takes precedence of all other instruments. For if every instrument could accomplish its own work, obeying or anticipating the will of others, like the statues of Daedalus or the tripods of Hephaestus, which, says the poet, of their own accord entered the assembly of the gods. If in like manner the shuttle would weave, the plectrum touch, the lyre without a hand to guide them, cheap workmen would not want servants nor masters slaves. Here, however, another distinction must be drawn. The instruments commonly so called are instruments of production, whilst the possession is an instrument of action. The shuttle, for example, is not only of use, but something else is made by it, whereas a garment or of a bed, there is only the use. Further, as production and action are different in kind, and both require instruments, the instruments which they employ must likewise differ in kind. But life is action, and not production, and therefore the slave is the minister of action. Again, a possession is spoken of as a part is spoken of, for the part is not only a part of something else, but wholly belongs to it. And this is also true of possession. The master is only the master of the slave. He does not belong to him, whereas the slave is not only the slave of his master, but wholly belongs to him. Hence, we see what is the nature and office of a slave. He who is by nature not his own, but another's man, is by nature a slave. And he may be said to be another's man who, being a human being, is also a possession. And a possession may be defined as an instrument of action, separable from the possessor. Wow. Yeah, that's a fantastic piece of text. I mean, I've thought about these like parts wholes relationship and instruments, but I just haven't made these distinctions as clearly as I just read them. It's really helpful, actually.
That was a mic drop. And what do you have in mind here, Daniel? What's the fantastic part of the part whole relation here?
This expanding on the so there's a few distinctions that I won't be able to recall, but they're in there in the text. But I think what struck me most was it's the instrument that, okay, the last distinction was the instrument that's also a possession, and the domains in terms of an instrument that is used in a single sense, so like a bed, then an instrument that is used to produce something. So there's a secondary artifact. And then the third one, which is the living instrument, is used to act, or the action is a special domain. The living instrument is, and that kind of instrument is possessed. But I'm just repeating as many categories as I can in this domain, trying to get the differences between them. But
the part that's always striking to me here is this understanding of parts. I find it to be very powerful, that what makes something a part is that it can't be, how does he put it here? Well, he says it wholly belongs to something else. It doesn't exist independently. And this is the way in which Aristotle's account of ousia, his account of substance, is so powerful. A part of a thing isn't a thing. I'm just mumbling vaguely here. You can't understand the heart by taking it out of the. I mean, unfortunately, this is the way we do science nowadays. But he thinks it doesn't make sense. You can't take the heart out of the body and put it on the table and then come to understand it by looking at this thing sitting there on its own, because that's not what it is. It doesn't exist like that. It isn't a thing like that. At least it's not the thing that it is inside the body when it's sitting on the table, because everything about its being is subordinated to the overall function that it is contributing to, whether that function is a production or an action. In this case, the ones we're interested in are actions. The heart can only be understood in terms of its place in the living being. You take it out of that place and it's not a heart anymore. So too, the instrument, the rudder of the boat, or even what was it, the lookout on the boat, who is himself animate, doesn't make sense outside of his place in the relation. He's not an ousia on his own, at least not as a lookout, or as a heart, or as a rudder. These things they're not independent things. They're not just subordinate in some vague political sense, whatever that is, or concrete political sense for that matter. They're subordinate in their being. What they are is in terms of their place. It's the master that's puzzling here. The master somehow seems to be connected to the whole. So in the last chapter, that we divided the household into parts, and all three of the parts had the same guy in it. The father, son, the husband, wife, the master, slave. What's the deal with that guy?
The head of the house.
Yeah. Yeah, is he independent, or is he also only understood in terms of the whole? It says here, see if I can find it. Yeah, so this is my translation. This is about line 12 here, 1254, 812. Accordingly, while the master is only master of the slave and does not belong to him, the slave is not only slave to the master, but belongs wholly to him. So I don't think that's just, like a man owning another man kind of assertion. It's the being of the thing belongs to the other thing. Can't be understood outside of it. But somehow the master seems to have this weird other character. Try this in a slightly different way, because I know you guys are all.
Something.
I know you guys are all. Thomas, did you want to say something there?
No, the master seems to have something over and above the relation of being a master and a slave, whereas the slave is.
Yeah, what does that over and above mean, I guess is the question. So I'll give you a suggestion here, and I know you guys are all religious people, so this can be a biblical example. It's a little too Jewish, but that's all right. You'll be able to you at least know the characters. So in some forms of Judaism, when Moses is spoken of, he's referred to as feeling the pain of any person in the nation of Israel. Right? So when a member of the nation of Israel feels pain, Moses somehow feels that pain. Okay, so what's the point there? Moses obviously is the paradigm leader, the master, the father. So as leader, he is somehow, this is the suggestion I'm trying to make here, kind of sloppily, he's somehow connected to the whole. He's not just a part, he's the whole itself. And he's there in all the parts.
In our in our political context, it's almost better and then worse. It's like if the part is drawing its being from the master who is drawing it from being or from the whole, the subordinate position seems to be made more subordinate.
Yeah, and but I think it's really the interesting one is the position of the ruler. I mean, even in someone like Hobbes, you want to make this this king as strong as possible. At least you want to make his grip over the state as tight as possible so that he can view the state as his own body. And the queen always refers to herself as we, because in her person is the person of the whole, I guess now it's a king. In his person is the person of the whole nation. Uh-oh. I'm getting closer and closer to disappearing.
The battery.
Getting warned. Yeah.
Are we wondering how are we wondering how that works? How that relation, how it works that I'm thinking about pain and pleasure a bit because of the example with Moses that you gave. that he registers the pain of any part. Whereas one Israelite to another Israelite, they might not register the pain of another. So they're separate in this sense. Then we have that development of this pain and pleasure idea in the expedient and the inexpedient. So so the master is only the master of the slave, he does not belong to him. Whereas the slave is not only the slave of his master, but wholly belongs to him. So the master belongs to himself. The slave. Maybe I'm trying to puzzle around what is the belonging to? Like what is that manner of relatedness?
The belonging to himself or the belonging to another. They're both puzzling.
Yeah. Well, even that's a progress in my puzzling. The different kinds of belonging. Yeah, I mean it's familiar distinctions. This somehow the ruler as being set over or above, or however we try to language that, but also being a part of. We had the distinction a few sessions ago with the political ruler and the king. Will that help our consideration of how the master is constituted to the slave? I'm remembering a difference there in the kinds of rulership.
Yeah, we don't even know if it's the same relation yet, although this seems to be a commonality, that somehow the head of the household is related to all the parts of the household and is not himself apart in any normal sense.
Yeah.
I've also always found this fascinating. This type of part that is in some way synonymous with the whole. In the Republic, that the rational part of the soul is defined in exactly this way, and I think that is very relevant to. Is going to turn out to be very relevant to what we're doing here. The idea is that the person who is the head of the snake or whatever he's the head of is going to be the rational part. And if that's the case, on Aristotle's view of reason, which is different from the very cold, dry, modern view of reason, that person is going to be going to seek the good of the whole. Reason seeks the good. It doesn't just figure out how to be manipulative. It seeks the good. That's its defining character. It's connected to the end. And when we see that, the whole relation of subordination changes. It's one thing to be subordinate to somebody who has their own private interests. It's another thing to be subordinate to somebody whose interest is the interest of the whole, including your own.
Those are completely different understandings.
Completely, yeah. The first one.
Oh no, Larry left.
This is
Oh, I'm sure
his
he's as
battery.
happy as Larry.
This
Mm.
is,
Yeah.
so let's see if we can hold it together a little bit.
Well, that
What was that difference
you
that we
think
just
we can,
had there?
First
he
one,
said there was one where the guy's self-interested, and one
Yes.
where there's like he holds his own, well, presumably his own, your own, and the interests of the whole together.
Yeah.
You know, he
Yeah.
is by his nature in some sense. I think it's very difficult to believe. In some way, I think we find it very difficult to believe in such a person. You know, the idea of kingship is inherently revolt because the idea of such a person is very difficult to believe in.
Isn't that also the difference, though, between a person disciplining someone and a person abusing someone? Right?
Exactly. I would also say that's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah, because if you beat somebody up just to benefit you, and you're abusive. But if you're like, I don't know, hitting a child, like stop them to get doing what will harm them in the long run. That seems the difference seems to be clear. That it's in their own interest. So you're disciplining them not to benefit yourself, but to benefit them.
Yeah.
To preserve them. Yeah, essentially the same logic.
Yeah. The just punishment. It's like, and then our core question would be, and our recurring question is then, in terms of the distinction between these kinds of leaders, or is the good that the one leader is set over or is toward. So the bad leader is acting in terms of their own self-interest. So though they might possess a slave, they use that
To benefit themselves.
yeah, but then we need to like flesh that out, where that, because Thomas, the language you just used was like, it's hard to believe that this kind of leader might exist or might arise.
Think of it in the sense of like the example we're just using, a leader who would basically, it's crazy now because the term I'm looking for is slave driving, but a leader who would basically like destroy the servant in order for him to benefit would be
Yeah.
an example of this bad leader. While the other one somehow, the other one uh, doesn't doesn't even destroy the servant. In fact, the other one's actions are to preserve the servant. You know what I'm saying?
Say the last bit there again.
It's to preserve the servant.
Okay, guys.
To preserve the
I also
servant.
need to go. Hey?
All right.
Short time.
Sure.
Yeah, sorry, guys.
Because
Look after yourselves.
Go well, go well.
Because
To preserve.
preserving the servant preserves its function, and since the servant's function is essential for the functioning of the whole, it preserves the whole as well.
Yes. Yeah. 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 There's the language of like short-sightedness, far-sightedness would come in, and then if we were to say again.
I'm curious. Sorry, as I say, I'm curious about rebellion. Where does rebellion fit in? Because I'm thinking, well, since
The
Larry
slave
is
rebelling.
suggesting, yeah, since Larry is suggesting we're not talking about the same type of slave, thinking one example that might give us that is, for example, a slave who's rebelling is seems to already demonstrate that they're being exploited, that there's an injustice. And
Mm.
this is not the right relationship between these two
Yeah,
parts, right?
yeah.
Because when it rebels, it doesn't sustains that
At
sustains
the
the thing.
at the same time, the child rebels. So the child slave, the subordinate relation might rebel um, in a way
Mm,
that is outside of their interest. And I guess this is where it gets complicated or interesting because the idea of being ruled is that something like your interest or benefit is determined for you. So so then
mm,
like there's one sense in which rebelling is then um, it comes out here in the next sentence from when we were reading in terms of the nature of a slave. Hence we see
mm,
what is the nature and office of a slave. He who is by nature not his own, but another's man, is by nature a slave.
mm,
And he may be said to be another's man who, being a human being, is also a possession. So, but then the point is like a rebellion is something like a disavowal of the possession, which could be something
mm,
like coming to rule oneself. So it could be uh,
mm,
there's at least it seems like there's at least two directions. Like a rebellion can be out of the um, folly of the subordinate position,
mm,
or it can be the means. Well, I'm not sure actually. Maybe it's more of a question. It's like it can be the means by which the subordination is um, broken. I forgot which one I said first there actually. The so it's either um, I guess in the language of this, it's like how becoming a possession ends. So
mm,
one way would be you acquire possessions of your own, so tools and instruments, and then maybe even servants of your own, and then you are a master of the tool or the servant or the, but then you still have a master and like this whole chapter we're considering the household. So we're assuming that
mm,
this manner of relation then translates into what the next one was village or um but it's this similar question of like your point now is more like the rebellion is an indication that the master is not ruling properly.
mm. And if the function of the master is to rule properly, you know what I mean? If the function
Yes,
of the master is to rule properly and they're not ruling properly, it's almost an indication that you're failing to be a master.
but how does the subordinate position know that the master is ruling improperly?
I guess because the parts are being harmed.
Parts are being harmed. Yeah, yeah. I get you. I guess it's just because it's wonderful because like this is an articulation of a question that I think we've been with for weeks now, even in the other conversations that we've been having. It's like how I mean because maybe pain and ex like because the position of subordination is a position of being ruled over, and part of what one is ruled over by is what is to one's benefit and what is harmful to one. So then the
Mm,
ruler determines benefit and harm,
Mm.
And so the if there is apparent harm, if we understand the ruler to be just, that apparent harm
Mm.
is actually like it's the good kind of, it's a good punishment. It's bringing the part back
Like, like,
into the whole.
like our old dentist example.
Dentist, yeah.
Our old
So
dentist example. It hurts, but it's healing you.
so then how is the subordinate position to know that the leader is ruling improperly, or like this is a feels
No,
very
I get
true.
what you're saying.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying. And I'm trying to tie it down for some reason. I keep thinking of the body. So I'm trying to tie it down to
To the
how
body.
how does how does the body know? How would the body indicate to me that my soul isn't doing what it's supposed to do?
Yes.
And only thing I can think of is, well, if my body is consistently going through harm and pain, it's indicating to the soul that, hey, whatever you're doing, you're not doing right. Because if you were doing it right, you wouldn't be in this pain to begin with. Right? You get what I'm saying?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. The yeah, I'm also very like partial to this like this um I think it came up in uh, it might have been associated with our like is the prevalence of obesity and heart attacks, is that a testament to the injustice of the rulers of a state? Is one way to like express it.
It
Like
seems
it
that way, doesn't it? But how can you be killed? How can you be killed by your own indulgence?
ah
You know what I mean?
yeah.
Right? Right. You're something which, how can I say this? It's clearly something we shouldn't be doing, and it's very common. I would say to all of us, we all have something that we clearly should not be doing, right? Which we do, and there are things which we clearly should be doing, which we avoid doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Out of more out of the fear of pleasure and pain than anything, more than anything else. What we fear, the pain that comes from it. You get what I mean?
Yeah, I'm
Uh,
with you. I'm with you.
it doesn't seem. I get your conflict because now it seems like we're doubling back on the point we were making about pain indicating to the body something is wrong, because it seems sometimes we avoid the right thing because it's painful. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it seems to go contrary to what I was saying earlier. So I see your element of confusion.
The so I mean when Larry's battery died there, we had this. I mean, I think we're gonna the the good ruler and the bad ruler, and this idea of self-interest. And we've been speaking mostly now from the position of the subordinate. How are they going to determine if the ruler is good or bad? And part of
Mm.
what this subordinate position is um, being ruled or having it determined for you what is of benefit or what is expedient or what is inexpedient for your.
That, that's the thing that confuses me. Remember the point about I can't remember the last paragraph we read where he said uh, something that goes around, that it goes against nature and therefore it is unjust.
Yeah, yeah, he
Something
said
about the,
it
yeah.
was. it's a um
It's the slave master relation.
yeah, it
Some people
was
say it is by law and not by nature, and since it is contrary to nature, it is unjust. Okay,
yeah.
so if justice is tied to what is natural in terms of how I'm understanding it, then it seems that it's saying there is a way to do things. Right? There's the natural way is that there is a way to do things, and us finding the way to do it and doing it that way is just. And then if we go against the natural way, it is unjust, right? That seems to be that that seems to be important because it seems to say even in the art of ruling, it's not that the ruler determines these roles of the parts. It seems the roles of the parts have already been determined, but the ruler's job is to make sure that they follow the rules that are just, that they already been determined by nature. So it seems the role of the ruler is to follow the rules that are. Am I making sense?
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I think the role of the ruler is to, well, what is the, you're asking what is the ruler set over? What are they following? What is,
Now I'm saying it seems the ruler doesn't get to decide for the parts what they are, what benefits or doesn't benefit them. If it's natural, then it's already set for them. But it seems the ruler's job is to
yeah.
make sure that we go in accordance with what is natural.
Yeah, so then what happens if the ruler is set over something unnatural? Like how's the correction made?
Yeah, I don't know. And then I guess it seems from what we're saying, it seems the responsibility of the ruler would be to pull things back to the direction of what is natural.
And how do they do that?
That's a good question.
This is a
Very good question.
this is our recurring question of the good. It's like um
Yeah.
because they because they know in some way they're related to each part of the whole. In some way they belong to the whole. In some way they know they know the whole and its function. They can then,
Hmm.
by the sense of that function, can tell if a part is interfering with the functioning of another part. So like there's there's this way in which that determination seems to be makeable, where
Hmm.
the correction can come, but it still pushes our question of like what is it that the ruler then knows, or which is maybe a nice place to close there. I'm wondering if I'm gonna read part four again. Do you think that? I think that'll be a good closing.
Yeah,
I
let's
was
do that.
yeah, I was surprised. It was really um I realized that Larry probably knew it was coming, this piece of
Hmm.
text, but it has definitely been very helpful for me. Um, can you see the screen there?
Yeah, I can see.
Cool. So property is part of the household, and the art of acquiring property is the art of managing the household. For no man can live well, or indeed live at all, unless he be provided with necessaries. And as in the arts, which have a definite sphere, the workers must have their own proper instruments for the accomplishment of their work. So it is in the management of a household. Now, instruments are of various sorts. Some are living, others lifeless. In the rudder, the pilot of a ship has a lifeless instrument. In the lookout man, a living instrument. For in the arts, the servant is a kind of instrument. Thus too, a possession is an instrument for maintaining life. And so, in the arrangement of the family, a slave is a living possession, and property a number of such instruments. And the servant is himself an instrument which takes precedent of all other instruments. For if every instrument could accomplish its own work, obeying or anticipating the will of others, like the statues of Daedalus or the tripods of Hephaestus, which, says the poet, of their own accord entered the assembly of the gods. If in like manner the shuttle would weave the plectrum touch the lyre without a hand to guide them, chief workmen would not want servants, nor masters slaves. Here, however, another distinction must be drawn. The instruments commonly so called are instruments of production, whilst the possession is an instrument of action. The shuttle, for example, is not only of use, but something else is made by it. Whereas of a garment or of a bed, there is only the use. Further, as production and action are different in kind, and both require instruments, the instruments which they employ must likewise differ in kind. But life is action, and not production, and therefore the slave is the minister of action. Again, a possession is spoken of as a part is spoken of, for the part is not only a part of something else, but wholly belongs to it. This is the piece that, like, not only a part of something else, but wholly belongs to it. And this is also true of possession. The master is only the master of the slave. He does not belong to him. Whereas the slave is not only the slave of his master, but wholly belongs to him. Hence we see what is the nature and office of a slave. He who is by nature not his own, but another's man, is by nature a slave. And he may be said to be another's man who, being a human being, is also a possession. And a possession may be defined as an instrument of action, separable from the possessor. Yeah, I mean, it's probably worth a few more readings. Shall we? Shall we leave it there?
Yeah, I think we can stop it there.
Okay, power.